welcome to the Purpose Over Profit podcast with Darren and Chris, where each week we discuss what it takes to live a life of purpose and profit and explore the lives of people trying to achieve just that. Welcome back to the Purpose Over Profit podcast. As always, I've got Chris Dowdell with me. How are you, Chris?
Very well, thank you. I'm looking forward to speaking to Emma.
Yeah, as Chris alluded to, I'm delighted to welcome Emma Dempsey, who is my own coach. And has helped my transition through out of the corporate world into the scary world of business. So delighted to get Emma on and talk about the power of coaching. Talk a bit about her coaching experience and how she's transitioned into coaching and what can you expect. There's a lot of misconceptions about coaching and coaches. So Emma's going to help square all of that off, aren't you, Emma?
We're going to.
Yeah. How are you this morning?
I'm good, thank you. I'm glad to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
Good stuff. So thinking back, you've been coaching for how many years now?
Since 2017. So yeah, since May 2017, I think I started my training. So almost 4 years.
4 years. And thinking of when you were prior to kind of going into the coaching space, what was it that kind of brought you into to say, yeah, coaching's for me, that's something that I want to transition into?
Truthfully, I had a bit of a nervous breakdown. And it was like, I call it a midlife kind of breakdown, but actually I renamed it my midlife awakening. And I was working at the time in kind of health and development. My background is health and development, and I had to go off work for a few weeks with kind of acute anxiety, really, which I'd never had before. And somebody suggested that I went to see a coach. And at the time, so these misconceptions that you were talking about, I was like, a coach? Why do I need to go and see a coach? Like, what even are they? And my friend convinced me it would be a good idea. And I went to see a coach. She was a coach and an EFT therapist. You know that EFT is that like tapping?
Yeah, tapping.
Emotional freedom technique. And I went to see her, and really in the space of 90 minutes, she just kind of surfaced some beliefs that I had that were impacting my well-being, really, and the discovery that they weren't even kind of my beliefs. And in that 90-minute conversation, she just really helped me to kind of reflect on things and to think about who I wanted to be going forward, really. I know that sounds quite cheesy, but I left that 90-minute session just feeling amazing and really empowered. It was almost like I felt kind of my power coming back in that conversation with her. And then I left and I got into my car and I Googled coaching. What just was that? And I could do that. And that was amazing. And my course was starting a couple of weeks later and I signed up. And
am I right in saying as well that I've seen from your background, you're a social development and behavioural change? Is that what you specialised in as well? Or is that more recent?
No, that was my previous. I mean, it still comes into my coaching, I would say. But yeah, my background at the time, I've a master's in social development, and I was working in various jobs that were really kind of focusing on behaviour change, but more from organisational. We're encouraging you to change your behaviour as opposed to, hello, individual, are you thinking about changing your behaviour type of stuff?
Kind of looking at it from a kind of values point of view from a company or organisation around behaviour change and actually how they can actually implement it, whether or not to do with any benefits, that kind of angle.
No, it's more public sector. So it was more around kind of for social benefit and for health. So fantastic. Changing behaviour for social good or for better health outcomes. So working with kind of communities around better health choices and things like that. And encouraging, healthier lifestyles, really.
So it's all about helping people at the basis of it all as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so actually that coming to coaching and recognizing that actually, like I always say this, like the shifts that I see happen in the coaching space are unlike anything I'd seen before in 20 years of kind of trying to create those shifts, and actually by people coming to their own conclusions and their own kind of choices in that stuff was just really powerful. And I felt it that day in that session and just thought, wow, what is this thing I've just discovered? And I often now wonder, like, if I'd known what I know now through coaching, when I was doing a lot of that work and that behavior change stuff and around mindset and all of that kind of thing, like what might I have done differently, or the impact that could have had.
Is that, do you think the individuals that you were dealing with there almost as a, an individual, look at it more as a peer-to-peer coaching to help understand what their drivers are and help them unpick in terms of what is it that they're trying to get to? Because often these political layers or hidden layers from organizations that kind of stop you from getting the change that you maybe want to to achieve.
Absolutely. And so actually, and I don't know how that would have been in terms of like the capacity to do that and to work with lots of individuals. But yeah, absolutely. Like, what does it mean to them? To like, what is it that they want to change? So less about like us coming in, and like the work that I did, I'm very proud of. It was really good, and we did it from a really good place. But actually, coming in and saying to people, "Oh, you need to eat healthier," when actually, well, my house is falling down, and I'm on a 0 hours contract, and I don't know where my next, paycheck is coming in. Actually, is that the thing that would make the most difference to you? Swapping, your meal for a salad or whatever, but actually going in as what would be more meaningful to them and allow them to kind of make healthier choices. Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think like what you're saying, that when I hear choices, you mentioned choices there, it's something like a responsibility. It's taking the responsibility on, like helping them, like clients see the choices and helping them like feel responsible for the direction and confident that they can go and make those changes and achieve those choices.
But also recognizing it's their choice. So instead of us coming in and, here's what we're choosing. Actually, what would be meaningful to you, and what would allow you to live healthier or to feel more empowered, or whatever that was.
And it must be hard in that kind of situation going in when obviously they've got so many other things they're fighting against, like you say, if there's housing issues, if there's anything else, you get in from a kind of health and well-being point of view, but the health and well-being is partly out of their control as well, which they're trying to get control of. So, but that sounds like a great kind of stepping stone, if you like, to kind of take that years of experience to then move on to the next part of that transformational session of 90 minutes. Sounds quite a transformation from that.
I know.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, and it was. And like I often reflect, I know her now and I reflect that back to her, and I often say to her, it was the questions that she asked me were so powerful, and I can still remember the question that gave me the light bulb kind of moment. But she would say like, oh no, a lot of that was the tapping and it was the emotional release. But I can remember, I'll tell you the question. I had a belief about like, it was a kind of a money narrative thing, and the belief about like who I was and my ability to earn money and go it alone as a single parent and that kind of thing. And it was a limiting belief, and it was a belief that was limiting me so much that it was affecting my mental well-being. And she just asked me, well, whose belief is that? She'd asked me, like, and now as a coach, I know what she was doing. She'd asked me for evidence around the belief, and she was unpicking the belief. But then she asked me, well, whose belief is that? And honestly, and I've talked about this before on podcasts, but it was like the clouds in my mind just separated. And I saw light, and I felt it like almost viscerally. And I was like, oh my God, like that's not even my belief. It's a belief that somebody else had imposed on me, but was making me unwell. So in that moment, when I went back out to the car, I was like, wow, well, if that's not my belief and it's having this effect on me, like what else am I believing, and what other things am I holding, and actually like who am I, and how do I like go further and unpick this stuff, which is what coaching is so brilliant for.
Yeah, and you can't stop the beauty. I guess you've helped my transition to becoming a coach as well, and yeah, you can't stop it once you start asking those questions. You can't kind of put the rabbit back in the box sort of thing. It's like it's out, so it starts to snowball, and it can sometimes prove more challenging in terms of where you need to go, and the answers that you need to get back aren't the ones that you necessarily want to be having, but you can't kind of stop yourself at that point.
Yeah, and like some of that, as you say, is like joyous and exciting and oh my God, and light bulb moments, but some of it can be darker or grittier, or more things to wade through before you get back to the light.
So we've arrived at, I guess you had a challenging period, and we'll talk about language, and we've already touched on narratives there a little bit in terms of from your own perspective. But I love the fact that you'd said, you've reframed. Often we take thoughts as our own and beliefs as our own because they're like that, they are us. But actually, we've got a power to choose whether that is part of us or that thought is something that I want or not. And you've taken that difficult period of your time, your life, to say that's my midlife awakening, I think you describe it. And you could call that many other things, but actually that's a positive reinforcement trait, which is inevitably, here you are 4 years on. I know how successful your business is. It makes you a bit cringy to hear that sometimes, but six-figure coach, you've helped hundreds of, if not thousands of coaches over that 4 years as well. But that really has been a catalyst, and part of that is the language that we use to I guess reaffirm who we are and who we want to be. Yeah. But I just wanted to capture that there as well, right at the very, very start, just the power of language, I guess. Yeah. So thinking about your transition into coaching then, so you were in this relatively senior role in terms of social, creating social change. Talk to me about some of the other thing. Maybe a money narrative was going on there, but what else was going on in terms of that decision to move out of that career into coaching?
So yeah, there was the whole kind of, I had divorced. There had been some stuff happening, like in the couple of years leading up to that. I had divorced, and I was single parenting, co-parenting, but on my own when I was on my own kind of thing. And I knew I only wanted to work part-time. I thought my kids had been through quite a lot of change. I didn't want them going into kind of after school club at the time. So I could only work part-time. So I was only on a part-time salary, and that was just, I was finding it really hard to manage that. But also when I had done some work again through coaching and through training as a coach, like around my values, and really like just getting super clear on my values in terms of like what were the beliefs that I held and the things that were really important to me, it became apparent that the job that I was in, although like kind of outwardly it felt like absolutely this was kind of in line with my values around empowerment and inequality and all of those things. But actually the way that it was set up, and without kind of going too much into it, I suppose the way that it was managed didn't align with my values at all. So going into work every day was just not feeling good, just wasn't feeling good at all. And I just, it came to a point where actually, and I started kind of coaching then, and I was at that kind of balancing act of I'm working with some clients, but I'm still going into my job 3 days a week, and like when do I kind of make that leap? And it was very much like I'm in my flow doing this side of things. I'm loving this, I'm loving the work with my clients, and then I'm feeling quite sick when I'm actually going into work. And actually so
and that's quite brave. I mean, talking around the decision of the divorce, co-parenting, don't want your child to go in the after school club as well. You want to spend as much time with them and be with them, and what kind of walk them through those kind of transformational times themselves as well, from going from one life change to another. And then I guess you talked about the values. So what are your values just now, if you don't mind me asking? Because obviously you've kind of touched upon a few there.
Yeah, my values at the moment, and I know that they do shift and change, are absolutely like honesty, growth, and warmth are my three kind of top values. And at the time, one of my top values, like it still is really important to me, was equality and kind of equity. Yeah, and I was really immersed in that world. So there was something at the time about the way that the place was managed didn't really align with that.
I think that's amazing, because that's pretty much the notes I have here. I had honesty, warmth, and growth, and addressing social inequality, and it has to be evidence approached. I've got it down there as well.
Is this from research that you've done?
This is from research, just some research, and I was intrigued when I asked those values to see how they shifted, but haven't shifted, because obviously when you worked in that public sector piece, I guess because you don't see the change that you want to make happen straight in front of you, but I guess with coaching you get to see that change instantly, and then over a period of time as well, which must make a massive difference.
Yeah, and sometimes you do, and sometimes it's like longer term. I have my lovely colleague who once said to me that like sometimes we don't get to see the great oak that grows. Sometimes we just help plant the seed, and I really like that as well. So, but yeah, a lot of the time you will see shifts and transformation in the space, but actually those shifts and transformations will kind of carry on. You know, when like we don't ungrow once we grow.
Lovely.
Yeah. And just like thinking back to your own coach, it gave you that 90-minute session where kind of for me, it's like a bit of a snowball. It's like opening a box and you can't shut it again. You know, you're I'm presuming from what you've said, you're not working with her anymore, but what a fantastic catalyst that she was able to have and open up and present you to some thoughts and ideas. And that has enabled you to grow into that big oak tree as well. So it's fantastic.
And she knows that, and I tell her that regularly. I go back, you know, Trisha Murray is her name, she's fab, and I often tell her that.
So making that move into the coaching space definitely wasn't a monetary decision. You know, as Chris said, I would echo that from a bravery point of view. You've gone from, you know, relatively secure job, as secure as you could get, but recognizing it wasn't sat with your values, and you could only answer that question or come to that decision now that you've done the coaching and you've done that inner work and you understand your values and yourself better. Mm-hmm. So you've made that transition into coaching, and I know you've been doing that for over 4 years now. So thinking about moving into that, we mentioned earlier around some misconceptions about coaching. How have you seen them come through over the 4 years that you've been coaching, and have you seen any changes in that time?
About the misconceptions?
Yeah, about some misconceptions people might have about coaching, how coaching has even evolved over that time as well.
Let me just think about that. So the kind of, I suppose for me, the misconceptions were like, well, I didn't really know what it was. And I thought, I guess I thought it was somebody telling me what to do and somebody telling me how to live my life, and oh God, why did I need that? Because that would just be really irritating. And also just all a bit kind of woo-woo and you know, just kind of put it on a vision board and it will happen kind of thing. And yeah, I know now that that's not it. I mean, I've trained hundreds of coaches in transformational coaching, and what I love, and I always go back to, is that it's like, you know, brings so many different kinds of people into it. And so there's coaching, and then there's all of the different humans, I suppose, who take that on and coach to loads of different ways of working. But I suppose going back to that idea of the evidence base as well, like actually there is a strong evidence base that these techniques are effective. You know, the fact that I might use cognitive behavioral coaching, which is like a strong evidence base, or there's narrative coaching, different, I suppose, the different methodologies and robust methodologies that I didn't really think about at the time when I was thinking about what a coach is, and all of the different places where coaching happens and coaching works. And it's not just kind of these, I suppose, my idea as well of very male coaches in the executive space, but actually there's coaches doing loads of great work in loads of different spaces, you know, so in, I don't know, in health or in business or in social justice, or, you know, all of those different kind of areas. So yeah, I think the breadth of coaching, the different types of coaching, the depth of coaching, all of those things weren't necessarily things that I was aware of when I kind of first entered into it.
I think that's what is fantastic to hear as well. So it's not a one-trick pony. It's not one size fits all. It's pretty much, as humans, we're all unique. Our DNA is very different as well, obviously. So it sounds like whenever you speak with a coach or a person you're going to be coaching, you can then dial up or dial down depending on how you can get the vibe off them as well. Yeah. I guess at times there might be not a right fit, which I guess can happen as well. And you've got to either move that person on or work with them and develop them. But it sounds like you've got a lot under your scope to kind of develop and work with them, depending on where they are in their career or their situation as well.
Yeah, and I love that. I love what you said, and that's so true. And also, like, one coach can't be everything to everyone. So actually, people will seek out different coaches at different times in their lives for different things. Like, I work with different coaches depending where I am or what I kind of want. And so there's different coaches fulfilling all of those roles as well. So yeah, it's varied, and yeah. I
suppose
good answer. No, great answer.
Yeah, no. And thinking about, I guess, so I know you're just off a new an introductory call, but if someone was coming to you for coaching, how would you describe that to them then? How would you help give someone who's relatively naive to coaching or ignorant around coaching, how would you describe that to them?
So I would say, and these aren't my words, this is often like kind of a similar definition that I would use in my kind of training or introduction to coaching, that it's very much, well, especially how I do it, it's very much a conversational based approach. So it's having a conversation and it's supporting somebody to get from kind of where they are to where they want to be. So it's quite outcome focused. It's about meeting with somebody who will listen to you, who will hold that space, who will reflect stuff back to you, who will be curious and present and ask you questions. And just, I always talk about like unpicking stuff, helping you unpick stuff. But for me also, and as a transformational coach, and I know you're a transformational coach as well, it's also very much about like our clients show up and they say the stuff and they talk about the thing, you're having this dialogue, but also there's all of the stuff underneath. So there's all of those things that we hold that we aren't even necessarily conscious of sometimes. So the assumptions that we bring are, you know, our social conditioning, the stories that we hold, the narratives that play, that either I'm this, I'm that, I can't do this, someone said this to me when I was 5. There's all of that stuff. Our gender, how we show up in the world, all of those things that are really like interesting to unpick. And so when we're thinking about an outcome, or when we're going, oh, I want to do this thing, or I want to get to this place, like what is all of that stuff that's underneath that can either support us to get there or can really hold us back as well. And that's the stuff that I love and the stuff that I find so interesting. And it's also the stuff that fits in really well with the kind of social development background and the behavior change stuff. Like, why do we behave in these ways? And what is the stuff that we're telling ourselves, not even consciously? That's super interesting. And I don't know where else that happens, where else you have those conversations, if not in a kind of coaching space.
I know it's a very different kind of level of coaching, but I know a friend that was going through a tough time just due to his childhood, and he sort of a coach, kind of bit of coaching therapy, and it turned out it was something to do with the inner child, and he had to forgive himself and hug himself, and he had 3 sessions with this person, and he's a grown man, and he was absolutely in tears and buckling at the kind of concept, and he got to the point of forgiving himself, and that goes back to that point of unpicking it right back and digging right down to figure out what's there. And I guess that's the kind of maybe where those kind of therapy kind of point and coaching maybe cross over to a point to help people unpick an emotional side of themselves as well.
Yeah, what a beautiful thing. How did that help him?
Very much so. Yeah, he's come to terms with what childhood issue was, and yeah, he was just telling me about it, but he's laughing and joking about it, saying it was fantastic. This American guy helped him online, and it's just fantastic. So
there's even something in that I would say is probably more cultural, not going too deep, but you framed the in tears by he's a grown man, as if that needed to be relevant as well. And it's like culturally that can sometimes be, you know, regardless of where we are, particularly men, it's like how we use language is like that can feel like we're not allowed to show emotion, and we should suppress all of that stuff. And that's
Darren, trust me, any Disney film you put on, I'm in tears within about 20 minutes, so I don't even go there with that. So
I know that's not something I'd like for a fact. I know you don't subscribe to, but it is just so important, even if it's not as an individual level. Sometimes it's just culturally the environment that we're brought up in that we can sometimes think that that's suppressed. It's not even specific to us. It's like that's the world that we see. So that is the world. I think that's really interesting that you just noticed that, and that's nothing to you, Chris, but actually like the way that we speak and the way that we frame stuff. And actually that's the stuff that we then unpick. It's really powerful to just question that stuff. Yeah. You mentioned something there around where else do these conversations happen, Emma? You asked that question, and I guess it's one of the reasons why, you know, being a coach, I always talk to my clients about being like, if I'm struggling for confidence, that, oh, can I help this person? Can I help get them to where they want to be? It's like talking to a lamppost. For the vast majority of us, if we just went out and spoke to a lamppost regularly and got things out of our head verbally or write it down, through journaling, that in itself will have a very cathartic and growth, based experience from just doing that. So often the process of coaching, it's about creating that space for someone just to be able to explore how they are thinking. And it would be things that, I've spoken to you about that I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking to my wife about, because there's that emotion and relationship element there. So therefore, you're never going to get an unbiased sort of view. You're going to get an opinion, and there's lots of different conflicts. So often that's all for most people, I'd imagine that's probably the only place that they're having these conversations. Not all, but I'd imagine most people aren't having these sorts of conversations anywhere else. So it's really, really important, I guess.
I was going to say, Emma, actually, just to pick up with the brave point as well, I read as well that I love this quote. I don't know if this is still on your website, but it said that I want to fill the industry with bloody brilliant and brave coaches. Yeah. I absolutely love that. I love the language of all. I love the values that are coming, even your photography style. I think the values come out in that honesty, warmth and growth. All that just comes out of this kind of positive, engaging, kind of want to make a difference in the world, the kind of do good aspect as well. And that's all coming through and everything I've seen. And I thought that was a really positive. And I can see why people want to come to you now, because when they see that coming out, and even we mentioned this before, we jumped on the podcast about the picture you put on Instagram about the unfiltering, where it was just you without makeup on, just saying, this is me, let's just get rid of these filters. I found that fantastic and refreshing as well.
Yeah, that's really nice. That really landed with me emotionally, the bit about the website, that I wanted to fill the space with bloody brilliant coaches, because there are loads of bloody brilliant coaches who really love their craft and their art and want to do it really well, and invest in that and learn from that and grow, and they want to be the best coach they can be. They want to have an amazing impact with the people that they work with. They want to hold this great space. And sometimes when we went back to those kind of misconceptions, sometimes coaching gets a bad rap because of, I don't know, certain people go into it for different reasons or whatever. But yeah, there's loads. I work with loads of amazing coaches, like Darren being one of them, who want to do bloody great stuff. And so, yeah, let's get more of them on board. And I see that in my work as a trainer as well. A lot of the coaches that come through the training school that I work with, just amazing people doing amazing stuff. So yeah, thank you for noticing that.
And yeah. I also noticed as well, I love doing a bit of research as well. And obviously, Darren knows you really well, so I was digging a bit deeper. But I loved the coaching packages you put together. I mentioned to Darren right before he came on, I love the newbie to nailing it, which just when you broke it down, you say number one's values, vision, money mindset, your ideal client, and then bigging up and getting out there, is it? And I love that concept. I mean, you actually dig down at how much it costs, the value and the what you get back in that is just tremendous. And that's just one of them. I've noticed there's other ones like Stellar Conversations, Growth Mindset, the coach and supervision. There is so much in there. And I think for any kind of coach approaching you, I think that's just fantastic. Even for a business owner, that kind of newbie to nailing it would have been fantastic for me a couple of years back.
Yeah,
I'm going to embarrass. I'm going to embarrass. I know he always does this. He always does a ton of research, and I rock up with about 5 minutes and I'll ask these questions. But I'm going to embarrass you slightly here, Emma, because not only, I guess, the newbie to nailing it course, you're running it for free at the start of the year, which talking about creating change. How many thousand people?
Half
subscribed to that?
500.
Was it 500,000?
500, yeah.
500. I thought you got to 1,000 on it, so there you go. I bet.
That's still brilliant.
But 500 aspiring coaches.
Yeah, 500 coaches. Well, most of them, I'd say probably 480 were coaches. So yeah, and new coaches or coaches in training. And yeah, and it was amazing. And so absolutely that, going back to that, they came on that program because they wanted to explore what their values were. They wanted to create a business in line with their values, and they wanted to do great work. So there's loads of coaches out there who, fit that. So yeah, it was amazing. 500 in a program.
I didn't realize it was for free. So even when you break that down, I mean, you've spoke about the values and the vision, but the money mindset as well. Money mindset is massive for business owners, even the ideal client, because in a lot of businesses you're told to find a niche. And sometimes a niche is good as well, because then it helps you drive out competition and drive up your own price as well. But at times it's good to try and help as many people as you can as well. And you talked about social inequality, so you don't want to be exclusive. So it's good to kind of have that that kind of boundary, but 480 people to help for free. That is phenomenal at the start of the year.
504, I think. I say 480. Flipping a number that they were possibly qualified. But
it's going up. It's going up.
It was amazing. I think I initially was like, oh, it'd be great to get like 100, and then I was like, oh, it'd be great to get 300, and then
that was crazy. Yeah, I remember being part of it, and it was just growing. Obviously, I was in your mastermind at the time, but yeah, phenomenal. And coming back to something that you had said about helping, what's it? Great coaches do bloody great things, something like that. But that is part of the issue. Like with coaches, certainly if I reflect on my own experiences, about stepping into this space and having confidence to deliver and reach as many people as you can and change, because you've enabled that 504 people that have been able to come on and learn and listen and grow themselves. Think of the exponential impact that's going to have on the change and the amount of lives that they can go on and affect. I suppose it's phenomenally inspiring. And yeah, I guess because it was for free, I know it's not always for free, but because you ran it for free, price is kind of taken out of the equation there. So yeah, that's social inequality element.
And that was something else, because I hear a lot in the coaching space, like, oh, people don't value stuff if it's given to them for free, and that, you know, you have to charge a lot of money in order for them to value stuff. And while I absolutely recognize that, like, some of my programs are like kind of higher ticket programs, and actually there is something about committing a certain amount of money that's going to push you a little bit and, you know, help you kind of take action. I do recognize that, and I do agree with that. But I don't agree with this idea that if people don't pay for something, they won't value it. Some of my greatest experiences, my mentor who I work with, I don't pay. And like, I value that so much. And so I really wanted to bring people together and offer them something that there was no barrier. There was no like cost barrier, but actually also to go, this is a bit of an experiment. Will they value this, and what will they get from it? And like, the feedback was amazing, and people really did value it. They valued it that they were given it, but also they engaged with it. You know, loads of people were turning up for the calls. I got there was like loads of emails coming to me. I did like an evaluation at the end where a lot of people fed back and just got real value from it, and it really enabled them to move forward. And so they did that without paying a monetary price. They did that by committing time and energy. And, you know, that was really important to me, because when I worked in health and inequalities as well, a lot of the stuff that we would talk about was like reducing barriers, cost barriers to accessing stuff. And a lot of the rhetoric at the time, and not necessarily going to go into politics, but was kind of that same thing of, oh, they won't value it unless they pay for it. And I don't like it. It doesn't sit easy with me.
Well, I guess it's crucial as well, because it's given, I mean, we're still in a pandemic, obviously. So at that point in time, people are in that money mindset of scarcity around money and being worried about what they can afford and what they can't afford, which is fantastic. But we want to go back a minute. Did you mention, they mentioned academy, is that right? Because I've got down here a note about you do the certified diplomas as well as part of your...
Oh, I work for Animas, which is a training school. So I'm one of the trainers on the training team there, yeah.
So again, it's not just the fact that you're doing the coaching, you're doing a certified coaching experience as well for other people as well. Is that right?
So that's I don't do that. I work freelance as a trainer. I'm in the training department for training school where people study for the transformational diploma. What is it? A diploma in transformational coach. And I'm also a coach supervisor as well. Wow. So I love it all. I take it all quite seriously. I just want to do it all.
There is a certain credibility as well. I think like one of the misconceptions I had that I would see all the time is like, you know, it's a weekend course, come and join me for 2 hours on a Saturday, and by the end of that I'll be a qualified coach. And not to, you know, for someone going and seeing that, and I'm sure it would be a useful 2 hours spent, but the kind of the coaches you were describing earlier love their craft. They really want to be the best coaches that it can be, are taking supervision and wanting to try and grow as individuals and grow as coaches so that they can affect as much change as they possibly can. Mm-hmm. It's going to require more than 2 hours. So there's a real disparity, I guess, in terms of coaching, I guess, out there. So I guess it is important, maybe just by point of a disclaimer, even, I guess, make sure that, you know, the type of questions, we might even explore that just now. What type of questions would be good to qualify the type of coach, I guess, if anyone's thinking about exploring coaching for themselves?
Yeah, and that's a personal thing, you know. I mean, it's an unregulated industry, so you could set up tomorrow and say that you're a coach, and like, you know, that's not important for some people who seek out coaching. For me, it would be important that my coach is trained and qualified and has gone through like fairly robust training with a well-respected school. Yeah, that would be important to me. I would seek that out. And, you know, then there's accreditations that you can do as well, with kind of coaching bodies. But thinking about what is important to you as an individual if you're seeking out coaching. But I would say for me, like that's, what's the word? Fundamental, is that the word, or non-negotiable, whatever.
Yeah.
But actually my coach had good training, because, you know, you're working with people on their thoughts, and, you know, that's important stuff. You want to have an idea of how to do that, not just rock up and try and do it, you know.
But I guess there's an element where you can read textbooks and all this kind of stuff, but there's emotions involved as well. So you're going to get people at a very high point and a very low point as well. And understanding, having that training and the kind of the soft skills as well, how to manage that and walk people through that is very different than just watching a blog or a video.
Yeah.
Because you end up going back to your own personal experience or skills and then trying to bring that to the table when that's probably not right at all. So I agree with you. I think accreditation is critical as well.
Yeah. And there's like hours involved in that. So there's the learning, the weekends of learning, and then there's also like 40 hours of actual practice coaching, and there's a qualifying, you know, you need to send in a recording and pieces of work and essays and stuff like that as well. So yeah, for me that's important. I just wanted to go back to that thing. It always like lands with me, that term, soft skills. I get that.
Yeah.
That's what it's called, but I wish we could rename that. I always think like they're the crucial skills, you know, they're
critical skills.
Yeah, totally. But anyway.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like that, Chris is feeling like there's a witch hunt now, maybe.
Not at all.
Which is another phrase, ironically, in the sense I was watching Daniel Sloss last night, and he mentioned a witch hunt because he wanted to go into it, but he's like, in witches, it's not a witch hunt because we can categorically say witches do not exist and never did. But he was using it in the context. But and
it's also gendered language that we could go into and have a whole other podcast about. But yeah, there
you go. We better steer the ship away.
Well, in talking about language as well, I loved. I seen one of your, was it when you did the public speaking gigs? I love the picture I had up where people say about me, and you had, what is it? Who the heck am I? And I loved that. Yeah, I thought that was fantastic as well. Just when I read that as well, so it's like, so again, your personality's coming through. I thought that's brilliant. Even I read as well that you don't call them, is it pods? You call these people you work with different pods?
Oh yeah, my supervision pods, and there's pods in the mastermind that I run as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea because the pods can work together. I love that as well. I love the language, how it's coming across as well. So
yeah, great. And that's Who the Heck Are You is a workshop that I run, and it is around, who are you? Like, what, you know, my whole thing was like, you know, you could probably talk about your partner or your child or your best friend, and you could explain them in length and talk about them and their strengths and all of that stuff and like what's great about them, but actually do that about yourself, and that's where things get a bit trickier. And so the workshop, that was a workshop that I did for a well-being festival that I do sometimes, and it's really about actually digging deep. Who are you? What makes you tick? What do you believe in? What do you care about? And who the heck are you?
That's all that giving back again, isn't it? But the Wellbeing Festival, I'd seen that at the Edinburgh Wellbeing Festival we've done before, and yes, I think that's tremendous.
And listen, I just want to say this because you're talking about like me giving back and the 500 people on the program and everything, like, and absolutely I do, and I want to give back, and absolutely like I want to like break down barriers, but you know, just to say that none of these things are, well, no, not none of them, that's not fair. Some of the stuff that I do is 100% altruistic, I would hope, but also like, you know, the Wellbeing Festival is a great vehicle to get in front of people. Bringing 500 people into my program was amazing, but it was also about bringing them into my community and hoping that I would then go on to work with some of them, and like, just to be really honest about that. Absolutely, it's about giving stuff and breaking down barriers, but it's also about, like, you know, come in
and I appreciate you kind of like saying that, and if it's not overt for the audience, because there might be some people listening and going, oh yeah, but that there's a catch to that. Well, also it's coming from a place of, I'm going to front the value. I'm going to front up the service that I'm going to provide to you, so I can build that relationship. And I think that's how all good relationships should start. It starts with a welcome, an introduction, some inquisitive questions, because you're interested to learn and grow and deepen relationships with people. So I think all of that stuff's fantastic. And I guess I was curious to get your view on the key outcomes. So we've spoken a lot about some of the misconceptions, kind of what to look for in coaching. What are some of the key outcomes from, I guess, working in coaching? Maybe obviously you can talk from your own perspective, as well as maybe work with other clients that you're aware of that have worked with coaches, in terms of the outcomes they've got from coaching in general.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. And again, it's like when you think about those kind of sea of different coaches with different offerings for different times in your life and all of that stuff. But for me, I guess, and this is across the board, from the life coaching that I do and the kind of business coaching with new coaches, is something around, like, for me, it's like one of the key things is empowerment. And I know that word is kind of, I don't love that word, but it's something about connecting to our power in that space. And that actually, like, we all have that. We all have power. And it's something about reconnecting to that. Absolutely, that piece about, like, knowing who we are. Like, who are we? Like, how do we show up in the world? How do we want to show up in the world? Something around clarity. So getting clarity on who you are, awareness of how you think. And again, that is like a constant, like, that's a lifelong kind of search. But an awareness of kind of your paradigm, your view of the world, and choice to then move forward and to create what you want to create. So empowerment, clarity, choice. And then other things like kind of self-belief that come from that. People would work possibly to really specific outcomes. Like, what would you say, Darren? Putting that back.
I mean, clarity and confidence. I really like empowerment. Like you mentioned, that the who I am, I was going to touch on it earlier, but the fundamentally piece about values, life roles, who you are as an individual, your thought process in there is kind of the stuff that is so important to make any decision. Whether you just focus on that, I would say that's going to open up so many doors for you in terms of how, who you are, and make decisions so much easier. I think it was Roy Disney that said something like, when you know your values, making decisions is easy. And like, that's so true. If I know what my values, like, for me, belonging's a huge value to me. I recognize, like, certain decisions I'll make in my life, I'll say, how does that align to my values? Learning and growth is a real big value for me. So how can I keep that as a forefront of my mind when I navigate my career, my family life, my friends? That's going to be something I'm going to want to keep front of mind. But of course, you only know that if you've done the work to develop that and evolve that and challenge yourself to unpick it. So for me, I think that's probably a fundamental. But clarity and building confidence. So you can see, almost, there's so much opportunity out there in the world. We're got on our phones 24/7, and it's only when we cut out the noise and focus on who we are and what's most important to us that we can see what are the opportunities amongst that vast, like, plethora of different things out there. Where should we be going? What are the opportunities that fit right for me? Not just the culture that I'm in, not just who I see people kind of navigating towards. What actually sits right with me. So that's probably how I see it, the kind of most powerful outcome that I see with my clients.
Lovely. I love that. And I love what you said about the growth piece, and actually, like, how do I, if I know that's my value, then how do I make choices about that, and, like, where can I grow? And I remember discovering one of my values was growth. It was a really, like, eye-opener thing, whereas before I'd kind of not necessarily, I'm definitely not going to say I never felt content, but I had been told by other people that I wasn't content, and that I was always maybe seeking something else, like, whatever that was. And then it was when I recognized that my value is growth. I was like, that's what's going on here. So yes, I'm absolutely content with what I have. I'm so grateful for what I have. And I absolutely like come from a place of gratitude. But you know what? I really like growing and learning and seeking out new opportunities and stuff. And suddenly like it made that okay.
Yeah.
There was something really powerful about that.
I loved as well, you guys mentioned it to a point as well about giving yourself the power. And we had somebody else on recently, the sobriety lady was fantastic. She talked about loving yourself.
Kirsten.
Kirsten.
It
seems to be kind of similar values about the empowerment and loving yourself and being in charge of your own destiny and actually realising the potential and being able, like Darren saying, and being able to shut off from the world, because sometimes people are scared to turn off the noise, because the minute you turn off the noise, you're left just for yourself. You get to reflect as well, and that's why people meditate, obviously, to try and understand themselves better. But no, I think that's fantastic. I mean, if I was looking for a coach, every one of them would tick a box just now around each aspect, especially the awareness part, the self-belief, the clarity, the choice. I think that's just fantastic.
And that's what I find as well. It's like that thing, that piece about, if I knew back then what I know now, like what might have been different in my working communities and working in kind of like, I don't want to say deprived, but in communities that didn't have necessarily great opportunities and things. And actually to go in and to kind of explore that more there, actually like recognizing that, yes. And like I worked around power in terms of like the unequal distribution of power, structural power, and that kind of thing, but actually recognizing that we all have power, and we all have power to make choice and create change. And that might be kind of tiny and incremental sometimes when you're up against that kind of, structural inequality, but recognizing that we all have that, I just think is like, it's everything. And I often wonder, if I went back there now, or I was doing that work and coming from that place with that reframe, like what might be different in the work that I did or the work that I delivered.
Yeah, I mean, you look at things like the Black Lives Movement, the Me Too movement over the last few years, like the strength of that power when it comes together as a catalyst. And there was something that just really resonated there around the structural kind of layers of our hierarchy that create areas of like deprivation and lack of opportunities for people. But that seeps into each and every person's subconscious as well. And I guess coaching's got a real role that can help people claim that power for themselves and break some of that. It doesn't mean it's easy and that's all that needs to be done, but there's a real opportunity there to kind of to recognize that power within ourselves as well. So I think that's like a lovely place to finish, Emma. I think before you go, I want to get your view on COVID as well, and just the impact that that's had on coaching. We had another mentor of mine in the property space a couple of episodes ago, and she mentioned that she's finding a lot of people struggling to make decisions at the moment, feeling this autocratic, that cultural sort of, we have to be told what to do. We've had to stay in home and lockdown, and I just wonder whether you're seeing any of that in the coaching space and what your thoughts are around the real need for coaching, and if there's a growing need as a result of coronavirus and that sort of cultural impact on people.
Yeah, that's really interesting, that idea that people are waiting for kind of to be told what to do. I go, there's a PhD in there. I think that I often, and it's funny, before pre-COVID, if we remember back then, it's like I used to say a lot, like people come to coaching because of something's happened. Either something's woken them up or something, I don't know what that is. Like for me, it was suicide in my family kind of woke me up, led me to lots of things, and then led me to coaching. Or like often events can happen. So actually what I see, and this is anecdotal, I don't have any kind of, proper evidence for this, but that it's almost like it's woken people up to something. And so people are now kind of questioning, well, actually, what is it I want? Do I want to go back to that place where I have to drive to work 5 days a week? Or do I want to be kind of sitting at home now, working from home? Or what might look different for me? And it's been like a kind of period of inward reflection. And I know that lovely quote that came out quite at the start, like before we rush back to, what was that? I can't remember who said it. I think it was
before we rush back to like the new normal or something like that. I think it was something along the lines of
before we rush back to normal. Is there bits of the normal that we even want to return to. That wasn't it.
Yeah.
Totally paraphrasing, but that kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like it's been a real place where people who might not have stopped and thought about their life and actually what they want their life to look like and what they want their life to look like over the next 5 years, 10 years, whatever, have taken that reflection. And what it like, coaching is such a great thing to offer in those moments to those people to help them reflect and unpick that stuff. So yeah, I've seen also more people coming to coach training. So people who maybe have talked about becoming coaches for a long time are now doing that. That's been really nice to see. Sorry, excuse me. But yeah, people just reflecting more than possibly, or more people reflecting and questioning the next part of their lives than maybe I'm used to, I would say. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about like people I know or people in my networks or social circles. Does that resonate with either of you two?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I suppose it reflects, like, I like to see that. I like to think that that's what's been happening. I guess there's two sides to the coin. Caroline, who we were speaking to a couple of episodes ago, I think was coming more from the sense of making the decision. But I guess you need to have reflected and asking questions. Then you need to have the confidence to make the decision. So maybe there's an element of coming to the coaching that's people opening up and reflecting more. That decision, it might be there's maybe some space there for, I don't know, to feel more confident about stepping outside, because these are fundamental changes. And I think if people are, say, in your position, like you changed jobs, speaking to a coach enabled that, or, it wasn't the only thing but it helped that transition. And I think personally, I think there's a real role for coaching in place. Sorry, Chris.
No, I think there's definitely, even when you look at the pandemic, there's things happen during the pandemic. It's just giving people more time to think as well. Whether that's people unfortunately been furloughed or losing their job, or you realising that in the industry they're in, that they may be just a number and they want to go and either do their side hustle, whatever that might have been, create that career. At that point, they don't have the confidence in that when they will look out for a coach. And hopefully it's an accredited coach, like we said, because you're putting your trust and your feelings and your livelihood in their hands. So I think at that point, there's obviously two sides to it. So there's people who at that point, they might want to transform their own lives, but there's other people in that situation, in deprived areas, that maybe can't transform their lives as well, that are looking for that way out. So even when I go back to that free session that you offered, again, it gives people an opportunity to try something and get a feeling of it as well.
Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking as well, like we're talking a lot about individuals, but actually there's whole structures at play and systems at play here. And actually like whole workplaces are reflecting on actually how do we want to be as an organization, or how do I want to be as a company? And is what we've done for the last 20 years the thing that we're going to do for the next 20 years? So those conversations are happening kind of systemically as well, I guess. And that's really interesting. And I also do, like, I go into organizations and support them to have more coaching like conversations where there's kind of more listening and kind of skill involved in that. So yeah, it's individual and kind of systemic stuff at play. It's such an interesting time, really, isn't it? We've kind of all been in it, and it's been this thing that's been happening. But in 10 years' time, when we look back on it, I'm sure have been really interesting outcomes.
I'm sure that there'll be a few theses and whatever else written about it over that time. I'm sure they'll be looking back at such a strange time. Hopefully, it is just isolated to this period as well, and it's not something that we end up run through into the next decade. But anyway, on that sobering thought. Before you go, Emma, I guess what have you got going on just now? Do you want to tell us a bit about, I guess, your business in general? How people can reach out to you and find you?
So people can find me mostly from Emma Dempsey Coaching, either online, most all of it online, and through my website, and my socials are all the same name, I think, Emma Dempsey Coaching. I am starting a podcast soon. I'm aiming to launch in June, which I realize is next month. I had a podcast and we've just finished it, so that I can, not for this reason, but one of the outcomes of finishing the last podcast was focusing on more coaching stuff in my
what is it? What is the name of the new podcast? Has that been determined yet?
It's called the Growth Podcast for Coaches.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's about growing yourself, growing your craft, and growing your business.
A great niche there as well to focus on for people as well.
I'm really looking forward to it. I've got that. And then Darren, I run a program, a growth mastermind program, which is currently running with 15 coaches, but I'm looking to make some changes there. And I've got some really exciting stuff come up, but I don't want to say it out loud yet. But I'll let you know. Another time. But thank you for today. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's good. It's been great to get into it. An hour's never enough to be able to get into some of these conversations, but I hope there's lots there for people to be able to take and hear a bit about your journey into coaching. And I guess if I can encourage anyone to go and check you out, Emma Dempsey Coaching, and just see on the timeline the level of growth that Emma's carried out in her business. Like, this is something that's happened over 4 years. If you think about where you want to be in 4 years, wow, what a crazy amount of change you've brought to your own life and the life of so many other people along the way. So it's been fantastic having you on.
Lovely meeting you, Emma. Fantastic.
It's been good to meet you. It's been nice to have some adult conversation in a period where I haven't had too much of that. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Emma. Speak to you soon.
See you later. Bye. As always, thank you so much for listening to the Pop Pod this week. If you'd like to leave a review or share the podcast with others, then that'd be awesome. You'll find us on Instagram at the Pop Pod, and on Facebook we have a community group called Purpose to Progress that anyone can join. And we'll be back every Monday with a new episode, but until then, stay on purpose and we'll see you next week.